All right. Hello, folks. How y'all doing out there? Doing a live broadcast today. I'll make sure, I think y'all can probably hear me pretty well. Let's see. We got a lot of folks in the live chat here. Let's see. There's Stingray, David Smith. Let's see. Got quite a few people. Let's see. Can y'all hear me pretty good out there? I think you probably can. Let's see. Yeah, I'm definitely live. There's 18 people out there. Let's see. Post a comment. Got a lot of news. Okay, cool. Yeah, got a lot of news out there, folks. Obviously, the big news for today, and I thought this was really big news, and that's Bennett Warren, who is a big four-star out of Texas, an offensive lineman. This guy is ideal for us. We need those big tackles, and they need to be long. They need to be, 6'5" at least. You'd love to have them 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", with real long arms, because what they can do, why it's so critical that they're long like that, is that with the arms and everything, they can keep those edge rushers from getting around them. And that's really difficult to do, because if you've seen these absolute tremendous athletes on the edge, and we have a few too, by the way, that we just got last year, but they're incredibly fast. They're usually 240 to 260 pounds. They're going to be a lot faster than any offensive lineman. And they've got all those moves like Jagger. They can do the inside cut. They can do the wraparound. They can do all kinds of different things. And you need that guy that can keep that distance, keep them at an arm's length, because if they get up close to their body, they're going to do one of those spins. And we can't have that, because we got to protect Nico. And this guy's going to be protecting Nico, obviously. And the guys that follow him, like Jake Merklinger or George McIntyre or whoever. So I think this is a great get. I think we got a really, really good shot at it. I'm not ready to put him in the boat yet, but I'm awful close. I heard I was watching Boogie Bentley's show on Talking Vols, and he's ready to put him in the boat. And I'm just about there too, because when you see that Steve Wiltfong took down his crystal ball for him, I thought that was very significant, because he'd had it up for months. But I'm going to show you this as well. Let me share my screen here, and I'll show you a couple things. Let's see. Yeah, current predictions here. All right, as you can see here, he just picked up another one. Let me make that big so I can see it as well. Yeah, that was from Steve Lorenz from Michigan Insider. Can y'all see that pretty good? I'm assuming you can. I think this is a really nice get, and there's 3 of them now called a VIP scoop, but that's the 3rd Michigan person that has said that. Hold on here. Let me stop sharing for a second. Exit full screen. Okay. So anyway, I thought that was big. So now we've got three Michigan inside guys who are saying that he's going to pick the Vols. Now understand, that's not easy for them to do, because they're going to take grief from the Michigan people. But what they're thinking is, and it's the smart way to go, and it's kind of what I've done as well whenever I think we're out, is just tell folks up front, because that way they know they can trust you. And number 2, they're not mad at you if you held it back, and then they're disappointed the day of. So I think it looks really good. Tomorrow, let me show you what time and all that I've seen. Let's see, schedule commits right here. You can see here he's committing tomorrow at 12 o'clock. This is what I'm seeing right there. I have not seen anything other than that, and that's on 247, so I'm assuming 12 o'clock. So I'm going to do a live stream tomorrow, and I'll probably, I'll put out a thumbnail so that you folks know what time I'm coming. Going to be on. It'll either be 11 or 11:30, if something like that. Might be 11:15, because I'll probably want to talk a little bit before and sort of get y'all's comments as well. But I'm going based on this. I've not seen anything else that says when he's going to commit other than this, so I'm going with that. If for some reason it changes, I'll change the thumbnail and I'll change the time. So just kind of bear with me on that, because I'm not 1,000% sure, even though it says it right there in Well, yellow and white. So anyway, I feel real good about it. So again, understand we've already picked up Satterwhite. Well, what did I do there? We picked up Satterwhite, who was a really good tackle and a big-time 4-star. And we were all a little bit worried. I know I was, and a lot of y'all were too. I noticed in the comments, because I read all my comments, or at least I try to, on all my videos. And a lot of y'all were concerned and worried about our offensive line. You know, we're going to have a lot of guys that could graduate at the end of this year, or, you know, they may come back. You know, they've got that extra year with COVID. But a lot of them may leave, and they'll certainly leave the next year. So offensive line has been a big deal for us in this 2024 class. And to pick up 3 straight 4-stars in Max Anderson out of Texas, Satterwhite, I believe he's out of Ohio, and then now probably Bennett Warren out of Texas, and he's going to be the highest rated of all 3, but they're all really highly rated. And we picked up a couple of 2 or 3 really good 3-stars who are probably guys that need a year or two, get a little bit of weight on them, get them in the weight room, but they're talented as well. We're going to be strong. And that's very important that we're strong in the offensive line, because we've got to protect Nico and all the 5-stars after him, or high 4-stars. And on top of that, we need to be able to run the ball. I mean, as you know, we run the ball more than we pass. And I know that surprises some people, but that's the truth. We usually run the ball about 53 to 55% and pass it, you know, less than that. So I think it surprises folks. And if you don't have that really solid offensive line. Now, the other thing that we have that is an advantage, because we spread out the field, I mean, really spread it out, typically the offensive linemen are dealing with 6 people, sometimes 7, no more than that, as opposed to if you've got a standard offense, you might have 8. Well, that can be a heck of a lot of people to have to account for, who can come in and blitz and kind of, you know, it just takes one to get through, to knock your quarterback's head off. And because we only have to deal with about 6 normally, that makes it a little bit easier on offensive line. And of course, last year we had Hendon Hooker, who was a magician. I mean, that guy could get out of anything. We won't have that with Milton this year. I think Milton's going to try to run, but I'm not confident that he's going to be, you know, he's just not going to be able to do what Hendon Hooker did. He was just so elusive. And Joe is a little bit more flat-footed, you've noticed, and he's bigger. Now, he's going to be harder to take down than Hendon, but, you know, that he's not as fleet-footed. So we'll see what happens there. You did notice that he ran the ball 2 or 3 times in the spring game. And, you know, you may see more of that. Let's see. Here's we need huge athletic O-line and D-backs. Yep. I hate that we missed Kai Bates. I was really wanting to get him, but we've been doing so well on the recruiting trail that I'm not concerned about it as far as that goes. I think we'll find another good cornerback. We've already got Caleb Beasley committed, and let me tell you something. Book Carter, woo, man, that guy is fast. Oh my goodness, he's quick, he's sudden, and he will knock your head off. And he's been rated as high as number 50 in the country, depending on which rating service. I believe that's either Rivals or On3. One of those has him number 50. So he's way up there. And we've got him committed, and he is really pushing hard for several players that are in the Chattanooga area in 2025 as well. So I feel really good about that, and I think he's going to help us continue to get good players. So the Bennett Warren thing is probably the biggest news out there. Now, there's other news as well. Let's see. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was the best in college sports. And I wanted to, well, no, I'm sorry. I want to talk about Nico. Nico, that's actually on the thumbnail. Let me pull this up here and kind of show you something I think is pretty interesting. Let's see. Let me pull this one. Okay. I think that'll do it right there. Add to stream. Nope, that's the wrong one. Remove. Here we go. Okay. Nope. Doggone it. Let me get rid of that one. Stop screen. All right. Actually, let me look at a few of these messages here, see what y'all are all talking about. If there's anything y'all want to talk about as well, like I said, I'm doing this by myself for the first time. I'm just trying to get comfortable with going live by myself. And y'all can have some control of this as well as far as what you want to discuss. What I'm primarily going to talk about is, of course, Bennett Warren, but also that ESPN thinks Nico has the most arm talent of any freshman out there by far. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But if there's something you folks want to talk about, y'all just put it in the comment section, and we'll discuss that as well. So anyway, let me add this. Share screen. There it is. And this is pretty interesting what they said. It said, Nico is arguably the most gifted passer in this class with the highest upside. He's still developing his large frame, 6'6". He's now 205 pounds. I believe he was, 190 when he got here? He might have been 185. So I'm thinking he's put on about 15 or 20 pounds. It says, and refining mechanics, but the arm talent is obvious. He fires the ball with snap and has the velocity to drive it downfield through small windows. Nico had a successful spring with eye-popping throws, but still will enter the season behind Joe Milton III. So really strong. This was actually in an article on A to Z Sports, and I believe that's Zach Reagan, who I really like his writing. He has a good style, and if you're ever looking, he's just got a good knack for writing. Some people just have that, So he's one of my favorites. But anyway, I just think that's very interesting to see that. Now, here's a guy that brings up Cam Seldon. That guy, I think everybody's excited about what Cam Seldon might do this year. He's a true freshman, so you don't want to get overboard with it. But when you see his numbers, and you saw him in the spring game, and how dadgum fast and sudden he is, and realize he's not going to be arm tackled. One guy's not going to take him down at 210, 220 pounds, which he fluctuates between that. And, I remember I showed y'all his highlights back when we got him committed, and I was shocked. He was playing up in Virginia, and he wasn't a 5-star, and I couldn't understand why he wasn't a 5-star, but the talent that he was playing against was not that strong. But he was unbelievably faster and bigger than every player out there. And when we took a look at Squirrel White, he had the similar situation, but Squirrel was small. He's 5'9", 170 or whatever. And he was way, way, way faster than everybody on the field, but he wasn't bigger. Cam Seldon was both. And I was just sitting here thinking, this guy in Josh Heupel's offense could be unstoppable almost if you get him in the right spots. So we'll see what happens with this year. But I know everybody's super excited about what he can do. Is it possible to have too many skill players? You see these guys and you wonder, it's how there's only one football. I guess they're just going to have to kind of spread it around. He's going to have his 3 wide receivers out there like he always does. Then he'll have his 2 running backs, his tight end. There's 6 targets right there to either run or throw. And then you got Cam Seldon, who could be a running back. He could be, he could definitely play wide receiver, or he could play the slot. He could do about anything you wanted. So it's going to be real interesting to see how he uses him, because you've already got, you got Dante that everybody's excited about. Then you got Brew, who is just absolutely one of your cornerstone pieces. I mean, that's the guy you throw it to on 3rd down. You throw it 5 or 10 yards, and then he gets you another 5 or 10 because he knocks, somebody down. And then you got Ramel Keaton, who is one of the most consistent wide receivers I've ever seen. This guy says, "What's Jay drinking?" I'm actually drinking a iced tea that I got. Have y'all ever been to a racetrack in Georgia? When I say racetrack, it's like a 7-Eleven. Okay. And I couldn't find any racetracks here in Tennessee, but they've got tea. It's called Royal Cup tea. And it's great. I went on a trip recently, and every time I stopped at the racetrack, I got their tea. And I was like, man, this is the best tea I've ever had. So I'm trying out Royal Cup tea, and it makes you a little bit jumpy. It's got quite a bit of caffeine in it. It's actually, I think the tea is from India, but they use it at the racetrack quick stops. So anyway, that's what I'm having right now. And it's actually a little better than Milo's. I don't know if y'all have ever had Milo's tea. And I like Milo's. I'm telling you, it's really good. I like this a little better. It's got a little bit more, kick to it, a little more taste, but it's a darker tea. So anyway, y'all don't want to hear about that. But anyway, we'll see how this rolls, but we'll see the targets that we have. It's really just a matter of if Joe can play consistently this year and stay out of the 3 and outs and not get sacked too much. If he gets it to these 6, 7 weapons that we've got, we're going to score like crazy again. And of course, the big thing that we've got to improve is our defense. I definitely think our defense will improve this year. And I know a lot of times you folks want to talk about defense because it's just so critical that we improve it. It was our weakest link last year, the secondary. Had we had a strong secondary, we probably win the Natty. I mean, that's just a fact. We probably would have won the Natty. We might have still gotten beat by Georgia at Georgia, probably would have, but we would have seen them again in the playoff on a neutral setting and with a good defense with our offense and not having that crowd cause us to go offside 6, 7 times and letting their defense have rest. It would have been very different. That's why I feel fantastic about the future of the Vols right now. It's probably the best I've ever felt about Tennessee football since, I guess, the 90s, when we had Fulmer and he was winning a ton. But I'm just super excited. I almost feel like we've got a secret, when you just know you're going to be really, really good and people haven't seen it yet, but I think they're starting to see it. I also think that's why we're taking a lot of grief from some of the fan bases. They're getting a little upset with us because, we're getting a little bit chatty about it. Well, not me. I wouldn't talk about it. But, yeah, it's people are getting very excited. It says, let's see here. It says we got to stop the pass. Absolutely. That's been our Achilles heel, man. It just has been. It's been the problem. But we're so far ahead of schedule. It was like the least concern that we had when Josh got here because we were going to be terrible at everything. We were coming off 3-7, and we had the NCAA nightmare coming after us. They were talking about bowl bans and all this, and we find out that all these players have been paid money. Then we tried to get a coach, and which was a nightmare. Originally the athletic director that we had tried to hire Greg Schiano, and that just blew up as bad as it could. Nobody was wanting that to happen. And I think he's at Rutgers now, and they're not very good. So that all occurred. And then we're just thinking, what are we going to do? So Danny White, who was the new athletic director, comes in. We don't know that guy from Adam. I don't know if he's going to be any good or not. Unbelievable, the job he's done. And he brings in Josh Heupel, and here I am going, who's this guy? I'd never heard of this dude. He's from UCF. He's got a good offense. I was like, well, at least that's something. But, other than that, I didn't feel good about it at all. To turn a fan on there, folks, it's hot upstairs. It's getting a little warm outside. But anyway, I wasn't really excited about Josh Heupel. That changed. It was probably the 4th or 5th game of 2021. I think we were up 4 touchdowns on Missouri or 4 touchdowns on South Carolina. And I remember watching in the Pittsburgh game how many wide open guys we had. And unfortunately, Joe was missing them. And then here comes this Hendon Hooker, and he starts hitting them. And I'm going, oh, boy. And then the next few games after that, we're up 4 touchdowns. And I'm going, I don't know what this is, but I love it. And we need to sign this guy long term. And finally, we did last year. We got him for 9 years or $9 million for, I don't know, it's 8 years or whatever it was. So he's not going anywhere. And then everything else has just gone perfectly as far as sports are concerned. Now, I want to show you folks this. This is very interesting. This is the top 10 best sports, college sports in the country. And this was done by CBS. And I think it's the first time they've really done this. But this is very interesting. Hold on. Wrong thing. Stop screen. I'm learning, folks. I'm learning. Here we go. And it's best in. Here we go. I'll show you this. If you'll look right here, Tennessee's number 1. And UCLA is number 2. Alabama's number 3. These are best college sports overall universities. Alabama's number 3. Texas is number 4. Then look here, Texas Christian. I guess because their football was really good last year. and they're good at other things too. Penn State, Michigan, and then Ohio State, and then Georgia was 10th, I believe. And they have a point scoring system. They have a certain number of points for football, which I think is number one, most important. Then they go basketball, then baseball, and they have women's sports in there too, which we've been good at. So there's your top 10. I thought that was very interesting. Y'all wouldn't mind taking a look at that, because here we are, number one, and that's one of the reasons why we're getting such a ton of money. I wrote these down because it was just kind of shocking. But in 2021, we took in $154 million in revenue. The sports, the Vols did, which was 18th nationally. Then in 2022, we went to $203 million, which made us 5th. And that was behind, I think Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State, I think, was ahead of us, and one more. So now we're 5th. We went from 18,000 donors that donated at least $5,000 a year to 28,000 from 21 to 22. And that's going to make a big difference as far as facilities, the money to help recruit. And even though we still have some NCAA issues with recruiting that we've got to deal with the next few years, having that money is a big deal. That's why that $8 million fine, which is the largest in history of the NCAA, is not going to hamper us, because everybody's excited. And whether you love football, basketball, baseball, or maybe it's women's sports, you've got a reason to be excited about the Vols and, donate money, which people are doing. Winning solves a lot of problems. Then on top of it, they can feel good about it because, the football team is usually the team you've got to be concerned about having problems. They've got a GPA of 3.15, which is the highest in the history of the University of Tennessee. 3.15, well above a B average, which I've told you folks, I lived at Gibbs Hall. All right. I played golf over there. I wasn't a football player, obviously. Do I look like a football player? But anyway, I lived there for 3 or 4 years, and academics was not the number one priority. I'll just go ahead and tell you. And we weren't anywhere near a 3.15. Now, when I was there, Johnny Majors was the head coach, and he was a disciplinarian. He didn't put up with a lot of crap. But, I don't think he was totally focused on grades. He just wanted kids to keep their nose clean and practice hard. And those poor guys, I'm telling you, I'd be in the elevator with my golf clubs, going up to the 3rd floor. And I can't remember, some of them were on the 4th floor. But anyway, they would get on the elevator with me, 2 or 3 of these football players. And that's about all you could fit on the elevator, because they were all 300 pounds and about 6'4", 6'5". And they would just lean against the wall, and Johnny had just worn them out. They'd been in practice all day in that heat, and, he practiced hardcore, and they were just beat up. I mean, they'd always look at me like, man, I should have played golf. I don't know what I was thinking. But it was a different world back then. It was very different. And when guys would get hit in the head, they used to call it getting their bell rung. Well, now we call it a concussion. So, the smelling salts and all that nonsense, that was the worst thing you could probably do back then. You didn't want the guy to, he's okay all of a sudden because he kind of knows where he is. Now we've got protocols and we've got all kinds of things to protect the players, which I'm all for. At first I was like, when they started having all these targeting and all that, I wasn't sure I liked it. But then the more I thought about it, man, we got to take that out of the game as much as we can. We don't need kids getting hurt. A lot of these guys are 18, 19 years old, and they don't know the risks completely. They just don't. And when you're 18, you think you're going to live forever, and you don't want to wind up being 50 years old and you don't know where you are because, you took too many hits to the head and they didn't put you in protocol. So there's a lot of changes going on with that, and I'm for that. I've come around to that because of their health. And on top of that, I do like the fact that they don't let you hit the quarterbacks and the wide receivers freely like they used to and knock them out. That used to really, when you think about the 80s and 90s of how NFL and the college football was handled, it was hard to keep them healthy. Now you can't just go in there and knock the crap out of somebody. You've got to hit them just right. And it's hard on the defense. One of the reasons why scoring's up so much, because it's really hard to play defense with these rules. But the rules are there for a good reason. And it protects the defensive players as well. There's less defensive players getting hurt Because when you hit a guy with the crown of your head's getting hit too. So all of that's good. Let's see what we've got here. Keaton catch against Florida. Boy, the Keaton catch. That might have been the most important play of the game. You know, if you think about it, that was like a third down and like 8 or 9. And that catch was for 40 yards, but it got the crowd going nuts. And it changed the momentum, I feel like, in the game. And there's always moments in time in a game, any sport, that change the momentum one way or the other. It could be positive, it could be negative. That really helped us and got us going in that first half to where I believe we took the lead. And what we had, Billy Napier was doing some crazy stuff. It was almost like he was playing as if he was 3 touchdowns behind the entire game. You know, he never took the points. He never took the obvious 3 points when he could. And he would go for it on 4th and whatever. And it kind of put him in a bad spot, especially towards the end of the game. You know, if they'd have had another 3 points, that would have been a very different situation. Instead of throwing to the end zone, you know, they could have been throwing a 10 or 20-yard pass and trying to get into field goal range. So I think this, we saw the same thing at LSU. They were coaching a little bit crazy, and all of a sudden, you know, you also noticed how Heupel learned from that Florida game, because he was trying to protect the lead with a 17-point lead with 7 minutes left. And all of a sudden, we started kind of playing a little different. And Anthony Richardson had a Superman cape out and was playing great. And we couldn't seem to stop him. But we tried to go slow it down there and just run the ball there towards the end and kind of let him at least have a chance. And then he went to LSU, I believe, which was 2 games later. Wasn't that the 4th? That was probably the 5th game. And he put the foot to the pedal the entire game. And we never let LSU get a breath of air. I mean, he just stayed on top of them. And we wore them out, which surprised me. That was a game I had as an L. When I was doing our 9-3 prediction, I had us losing to Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. And we won 2 out of 3 of those games, which surprised me big time. I didn't think we could go down to LSU in that stadium, which is known for being one of the toughest stadiums in the world to play on, and just absolutely handle them. I mean, we beat them like 20, 30 points. It wasn't even close. And, you know, he learned. That's the nice thing about Heupel. He's not going to sit there and make the same mistake twice, which is great. That's one thing that Butch Jones used to drive me nuts. It was like he never learned. You know, from the same mistake, he'd make the same one over and over again. Oh, what do we got here? Shane. Now, see, I don't think it's going to be Shane Beamer. If there is, look, Billy Napier might work out. You know, you never know. He's recruiting well. I'm not a fan of the way his coaching style, but he is recruiting well. And they're probably going to give him time. We'll see. You know, Florida's tough, man. Those people are used to winning. So we'll see. But I think if they wind up with another coach, it's probably going to be the Kiffin, because Kiffin would take that phone call in a second because he can recruit there. And Kiffin doesn't like to recruit. All right. If you've noticed, he doesn't like spending the time on the road and doing all that recruiting. He doesn't like it. He likes the transfer portal. At Florida, it's not as hard to recruit there as it is Ole Miss. There's a lot of great players right there in that vicinity that you can pick up on. Now, you've got to compete now with Florida State and Miami, which there for a while you didn't have to because they were just on the doldrums. But with NIL money, see, Miami's got a lot of money. So does Florida State. So, you know, they're doing pretty well in recruiting also. We've actually lost some players to Miami because of NIL. So let's see. I just want to hear Uncle Jackpot. Oh, boy. That game, that's the game that I think, like I say, the revenge factor is huge in that. It really is. And then coming to Neyland, it's going to be rough. I hope that's a 7 o'clock game and we get to do the fireworks and the all of that good stuff. Yeah, that would be great. What do we got here? It looks like interesting. A mega contributor to Miami's trouble with the Feds. Huh. Looks like I take a hit in NIL. I have not heard anything about that. I don't know a thing about that. I don't know that I should even speak to that unless I had something that was let's see what else we got. Do you think, oh, this is very interesting right here. Do you think Kiffin goes to Alabama if Nick Saban retires after this season? Very interesting. That is where Kiffin would love to go. That would be his first choice. First of all, he was offensive coordinator there for a few years. I think they would accept him because he was offensive coordinator. You know, I think they would accept him. And that's big because Alabama, they'll have their pick. You know, they just will. Now, that would be a very hard person to follow. But Lane's arrogant enough to think he can. You know, that's the one thing that Kiffin does not lack or has too much of is humility. And he might think that, yeah, I could be the next Nick Saban. He would be good at Alabama. He'd be dangerous there. He'd be dangerous at Florida too, but I'd rather have him at Florida because Florida is my you know, me personally, that's my nemesis. And I want a Steve Spurrier 2.0 for us to take down. And I would feel very confident with Josh Heupel. I think Josh Heupel's the best coach in this country. I just do. I think Lane's in the top 5, probably. You know, Nick Saban, because of his age, normally I would pick Nick Saban number 1, but because of his age, I can't do that. Not that he's not a good coach anymore. It's just he's only going to be coaching for a little while longer, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 years, something like that. I don't see him coaching into his mid-late 70s. But, you know, you never know. Oh, Aaron Young. Thank you, Aaron. All the SEC will be better thanks to NIL. We've lost a lot this year, but are going in the right direction. The SEC is we're the power brokers. Let's just call it what it is. There's the SEC and there's everybody else. That's just a fact. And if there's anybody out there from another conference, you don't like hearing that, well, then, you know, I don't know what to tell you. It's just a fact. Look at the national championships. Look at all that. TCU got a good dose of it. You know, they played Georgia. And who won that anyway? I can't remember. You know, TCU, they were from some conference. How'd that go? And these other conferences, you know, Michigan doesn't play a top 25 team until November. Think about that. Think about playing 2 full months of football and you don't play a top 25 team and you're in the Big Ten. Woohoo! Whoopity-doo. Am I supposed to be impressed by that? So they basically have to win a couple of tough games to get into the playoffs. That's ridiculous. We have a couple of tough games every month. So that's one thing I love about the 12-team playoff. And I know not everybody's a fan of that. They like the old school stuff. I love the 12-team playoff because there are teams in the SEC that deserve to be in the playoffs, and they can't quite get in there because you might have 1 or 2 teams that are just like a Georgia or an Alabama that kind of keep the SEC teams down that could be in there. And the thing is, when you get into a playoff situation, you get into a neutral setting and anything can happen. And I'm going to tell you right now, Tennessee, we get our defense improved and we keep signing these 5 stars, the Nicos, the Mike Matthews, and we're working on several more. And some of these 4 stars that are going to be 5 stars, we're going to be incredibly dangerous, and we're going to be by far the funnest team to watch. That's why our ratings are so high. You know, last year we had 2 of the top-rated games of the entire season, and that was Alabama and Georgia, because everybody loves watching the Vols. It's a super exciting style of play. It's fast. It's impressive, and everybody likes seeing, you know, people score. So I could see the Vols being a very consistent participant in that 12-team playoff. And I see a natty or 2 in Josh Heupel's future. I just don't see how. I really feel good about that. I could see him winning a couple of them over the next 10 years. And our biggest concern was just making sure he doesn't go anywhere. And I don't see him going to Oklahoma. I just don't. I think there's some bad blood there from, you know, when he got scapegoated as the offensive coordinator because, Stoops had his brother there as defensive coordinator. I don't think he's forgotten that. And plus, we're treating him like gold. And, you know, He seems awful happy. So I see a couple of natties in his future over the next 10 years. I could be wrong. We'll see, but he's going to be playing for him. We're going to be in that playoff, and it's going to be fantastic. And I can't wait for the one where, like we're finished like 7th in the country, and we're playing the first playoff series at Neyland. It's going to be epic. I mean, you think having Bama here or Georgia's here, it'll be even worse because, we might be playing like a UCLA or we might an Oregon or something like that in the playoff here at Neyland. Oh my gosh, it will be beyond electric. And especially if it's at night, we'll have the fireworks. It's kind of a rock concert anyway now with what Danny White's done with the stadium. And of course, we're making improvements constantly to it. It's going to be must-watch TV for the entire country. And I think that's another reason why our recruiting is improving so much, because kids want to be a part of that. They want to score points. Wide receivers want to catch touchdowns. Quarterbacks want to throw touchdowns. People want to be part of that fun that Tennessee's having, and there is no team having more fun than the Tennessee Vols. There just isn't. I know Georgia won a national championship, and they had a ball too, okay? But when it comes to pure joy and fun, the Vols are wearing it out. And I think everybody knows it. We're going to start getting more grief from the Georgia and Alabama fan bases because they see it. They see us moving up, and they don't want us there. And they especially don't, because we're also a little bit, we can be a little chatty at times as far as how good we are. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays. Let's see. Clemson probably will come over, not a fan. Let's see. I guess you're talking about the SEC. Clemson, I don't know what the SEC is going to do. I mean, the ACC is going to do. They only get a certain amount of money, which is a fraction of what SEC schools get. See, we're divvying up $800+ million, and the ACC is divvying up like 270 every year between what do they got, like 14 teams or something? So they're stuck till 2036. They're going to have to break out of that somehow. I don't see how they're going to be able to compete when they're making a fourth of the money that a Tennessee or a Georgia or an Alabama is getting, or an Ohio State, because the Big Ten's got a very similar deal. They're getting, I think, 800 or 900 million. It was a billion, but there was some I's weren't dotted, T's weren't crossed on everything there, and there's some money they got to give back on that. So we'll see how that plays out. But the ACC needs to do something. And, of course, you see the Pac-12's falling apart. They're all moving. So we're in the middle of a transition. You've got conferences realigning, and you know what's going to happen. The rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer when it comes to football. That's why the Pac-12 is probably going to dissipate, if I had to guess. Oh, here's a good question. Why didn't you believe in Heupel? His numbers were stellar. Who did you want? I wanted a sexy hire, somebody that had a big-time winning tradition, and I wanted us to pay the money for him. I wanted to pay $10 million, and I wanted to do what Alabama did after they'd had 10 years of misery, and they went out and they got Nick Saban and paid him $5 million a year, and that was when Philip Fulmer, after a national championship, was making $2 million. They went out and they paid somebody $5 million because they wanted a great coach. They were tired of losing. So that's where I was mentally. So we bring in Heupel at 4, which was kind of middle of the road, a little bit below middle of the road. And he had not been a big-time winner at some big program. He had good numbers, and he did look like a great offensive-minded coach. But winning at UCF and winning in the SEC are two different things. We've seen that so many times when you've got a coach who wins at a smaller conference or, some lesser conference, and you think, oh, well, this guy's the next. Most of the time that doesn't work out. It just usually doesn't. This time it has. I think that's pretty obvious. I would not have any other coach. It didn't take long for me to turn around on him and realize that we had somebody special. It probably took 3 or 4 games, probably the Pittsburgh game, which was the second game for us that year. Was it the second or third? I can't remember. But right then and there, I knew something's going on because I saw guys wide open, and I had not seen that in a long, long time. And I don't mean like a little bit open. I mean 5 and 10 yards open for touchdowns. And finally, like I said, Hendon came in and started hitting them. And then we saw it again. And then we saw it again. And I'm going, wait a minute. They don't know how to stop this. This isn't just Pitt. And Pittsburgh is a defensive-minded coach. You know, what's his name? Narduzzi. I call him Scaredoozy. But he's a great defensive-minded coach. You know, I give him grief because he tried to keep us from having enough seats there. He wanted us to have 400 tickets. 400 tickets in the lower level. Think about that. That's ridiculous. We gave them multiples more of that. I can't remember how many thousands of tickets we allowed them in the lower section, but it was like 8-1 or something of what they offered us, because he saw what happened at Neyland and he was concerned, but you know, our crowd had an impact on that game. And he was concerned we would do that up in his stadium because, you know, Pittsburgh doesn't sell out all their games. And I think we wound up with about 10,000 people up there and kind of took over there for a while in the game, because that's just how we are. You know, we travel well and we're loud. And we had a lot to cheer for in that game. When I think about how important that game was last year, because first of all, it was a revenge game. We should have beaten them at Neyland, but we had those issues. Getting that victory was important. We almost blew it, but thank goodness Hendon Hooker, who in overtime ran a touchdown, and I'm thinking we're going to win the game, no problem. They call it back, holding, and 10 yards. What does Hendon do? Boom, a dime to Cedric Tillman in the end zone, touchdown. And I'm going, okay, not only is this guy good, he's clutch. We got something special here. Then we have to finally exercise the demons of Florida. Can we finally get that monkey off our back? We're up 17 points with 7 minutes to go, and dang if they didn't almost come back on us. So we got that monkey off our back. And Heupel learned something right there. Never take the pedal off some of these teams. Then all of a sudden we beat LSU. I'm going, what's going on here? And then somehow we beat Alabama. And we've won 4 huge games. And we're 8-0, number 1 in the country. It's like, what? This is this guy's second year. We lost 30 players last year. We've got NCAA investigation. We got a cloud over us. This guy was at UCF 2 years prior. We're struggling to get any recruits in. And he's somehow taken these guys that some teams didn't even want, like Hendon, and he might win the Heisman. And Cedric Tillman, who was a 2-star, he was a 2-star. And looks like an all-pro. And now, you know, I think he's going to do well in the NFL. I think Tillman's going to do well. He's just got that NFL body, and he's got himself in great shape. I think he's going to perform really well there. And we'll see what Hyatt does. You know, he's got that speed. And I'm hearing good things from the New York Giants about him too. So we'll see how that goes. But that year was amazing. And, yeah, we had the South Carolina hiccup that was very unfortunate. And the politics of that really still bug me. And I know it does a lot of you too. But came back and beat Clemson, beat Vanderbilt. You know, I almost felt bad for Vanderbilt. I think that was a hangover from South Carolina. I think there was a lot of anger and a lot of guys on the defense that felt really disrespected and felt like that nobody liked them anymore because of how they played against Carolina. And they had something to prove to the world, to the volunteer world or volunteer nation. And they did. I mean, they didn't let Vanderbilt do anything. I mean, they were determined not to allow a point. And we beat them, 56-0 or something. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And this is a team. Now, look, it's Vanderbilt, okay? I understand that. But it was at their home field, and they had just beaten Florida and Kentucky, which shocked me. I mean, did anybody think Vanderbilt was going to beat those two teams? I mean, I certainly didn't. So I think Vanderbilt they got kind of a bad break there, because had we beaten South Carolina, I'm sure we would have still beaten them, but I don't think we'd have beat them 56-0. Our defense would not have shown up and been that angry and felt that disrespected. And sometimes, you know, when you get an athlete that's mad, they'll do things they didn't even know they could do as far as physically. And you had a whole team like that. Like the whole team, especially defense, felt just like their back was against the wall and the whole country was laughing at them. And they were like, okay, watch this. And then they go up and they play a good quality club in Clemson, who, you know, they were the ACC champion. They were they're just a good team. And they scored, 14 points against us or whatever. So they allowed 14 points in the last 2 games. So a lot of that, I think, was anger and disrespect and trying to show, and maybe we'll see that this year. And plus, we've got depth. We have some depth with this defense in the secondary that we've not had before. We saw a big improvement with the defense believe it or not, and everybody focuses on the Carolina game and some of the success the quarterbacks had, like Bryce Young and Spencer Rattler. But they improved a full touchdown. Okay, they went from like 27 points something to 21 points allowed. So they improved a lot. If they do that again or anything close to it, we're going to have a decent, solid defense. I don't expect it to be top 20, but if it's top 30 or top 40 with our offense, we're going to be tough. We're going to be real tough. So, and then the next year, that defense is going to get in the top 20. I have no doubt of that. With the guys that we're bringing in, you know, we've got these 3 freshman edge rushers that are outstanding, you know, which is David Hobbs, the 5-star, Caleb Herring, Chandavian Bradley. These guys are going to get developed, and you know they are. And you keep stacking guys like that, and these cornerbacks that we keep getting, you know, we got 2 good, solid cornerbacks, really 3 last year. And that was, if I can remember all their names, well, I'm not even going to try. I'm sure I got it in my notes here. But anyway, we're getting the guys. And Arian Carter, I am hearing so many good things about that dude. I could see him being a cornerstone linebacker for us that could be all SEC. I think that's where we're headed. And we're picking up some great linebackers anyway. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the defense. I think the defense is probably going to be the big story of the next few years, because I think our offense is going to take care of itself. I don't see how they don't. You know, with what Josh is doing with the athletes that we've got on offense, I mean, we are an embarrassment of riches on offense. We get that defense squared away. I don't know. I just don't see how it's not going to be fantastic. Let's see here. Lexington, Big Red, first time super chat. Here we go. Jeremy Lewis from Lexington, Tennessee, Big Red Tiger Country. First time super chat and long time Vols fan. Love your videos. Thank you. I appreciate. And Chilmont, keep up the good videos. Yeah, normally I would have Chilmont here with me, but he had a function that he had to go to where I would have had him. But I needed to do one by myself anyway. I'm trying to learn live, you know, and I'm using StreamYard and trying to figure that all out. And this was a good exercise for me to see if I could do this and hopefully do a good enough job to where I can consistently do some live shows, because I do enjoy it. I like talking to y'all and getting your opinions on stuff and talking about things that you want to talk about. And actually, this is almost like this is what I do in the comment section. I usually respond, but now I can do it live. So let's see if supporting young team members, even when here's somebody talking about our culture. Our culture at UT is, I'm just really pleased. I think it's going really well. Again, I keep looking at the GPA. Like I said, as a former Division I athlete myself, I know when the GPA is up for a team, they're doing the right things. It seems to always be that way. When the GPA is low, they're partying. Okay, that's what they're doing. They're having fun. They're doing things they shouldn't do. They're out late at night, and they're going to – here's the thing. When your parents are told you nothing good happens after midnight, do you know why they told you that? Because nothing good happens after midnight. That's why, especially when you're in college. If you're out past 12 o'clock, you're not up to good things. It's almost never good. So parents were right. I remember them telling me stuff like that. I was like, what are you talking about? Isn't that bad going? They were 100% correct. All the bad things in life seem to happen after midnight, especially with college students and athletes. Oh my gosh. You know, you saw, and I don't want to talk too much about Alabama and Georgia because some people, you know, lost their lives in that, but that's just, you see what happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's always bad. And fortunately for us, we've not had a lot of that. It seems like Heupel, I know he's a player's coach, but he seems to, it may be the way he recruits, because I've thought about that a lot. Because, you know, we could have picked up some 5-stars out of the transfer portal, especially from Texas A&M, and he didn't touch them. You know, he just didn't go that route at all. And he picked up some guys from BYU, and you see these guys being interviewed, the Aaron Carters of the world, and some of these most recent guys, and they're good students, they're articulate, they're smart, and they seem like really good kids, and they talk about their faith a lot. And those are all qualities that I think Heupel's looking for, because I think what he's figured out is, you know, I can work with the 4-star that's got a good attitude. I can't work with a 5-star that thinks he's all that and is not going to listen to me. So he seems to be avoiding some of that. And if he does bring in a 5-star, you know, and he's lucky enough to get one, it's probably going to be a real good kid. Like Nico, that guy's, if he got in trouble, I'd be shocked. I just don't. My understanding is he's all in on football. He's kind of a, you know, if he was a basketball player, you'd call him a gym rat. But he's totally focused on football and not getting into trouble and, you know, being the best player he can be. And I think we're going to see that with Mike Matthews too, because I saw his interview, articulate, smart, good kid. I think we're just going to keep seeing that. And if they're not, I think he avoids them. I think he avoids the 4-star and 5-star that's trouble. And he's probably, because he's a former player himself, a national champion, second in the Heisman, he seems to have a pretty good feel for people. And he probably knows as well as anybody, okay, I'm sure he had him on his team, the traits of, okay, is this guy paying attention to me? What's he talking about? That sort of thing. And I think he checks them off. Okay, this is a kid I want. This is a kid I need to avoid. And I think he's good at that. And he's, you know, we got a taste of that in that South Carolina game. Sometimes, no matter how good the athlete is, if he's going to cause you trouble, you may not want to go down that road. So hopefully that's the case. I could be wrong, but 2 years I've watched this, and I see the guys he's bringing in, and I see this GPA, and I see the culture, and that's all they talk about. You know, this good, clean culture. You hear a lot of that from the recruits. They really like that. And that's what, you know, it's funny how that plays out in college, because if you've got a bad culture, you can take a good kid and turn him into crap. Okay. That's not hard to do. It's hard to take a kid that's crap and turn him good. That's really hard. So I think what Heupel's doing is saying, let's just try to start with kids that are good and then bring them into a good culture. And then they're going to fit right in, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of trouble. And if they do start going a little bit sideways, the good kids that I already have are going to straighten them out and say, what do you think you're doing? That's not how we do it here. Okay, if that's the road you want to go down, you won't be hanging with me. You won't be hanging with this guy. And before you know it, you get ostracized. And that's smart. You know, they've got a winning culture over there. They want to win. These kids want to win. And they don't need somebody over there causing trouble and getting everybody's mind out of the right space, which is, I think that had something to do with the Carolina game. You know, it is a fine line between winning and losing at this level, the SEC. You'd better go in ready to play. You'd better have your mind right, because Carolina did. South Carolina came into that game at home with, 90,000 people screaming their heads off. ESPN was there. They had their mind right. And I don't think Tennessee did. I think they thought, we're so much better than Carolina. They're coming off a 38-3 loss to Florida. We're going to roll the football out there and just whoop on them. Wrong. That didn't happen. So I think not having their head right played a role. And also Carolina, they played a great game. You know, I'm not going to take that from them. They gave us a whooping, and it was very unfortunate. So anyway, that's just my opinion. Let's see what else. Aaron Carter. Let's see. Sam, here we go. Aaron Carter interviews he does sound like a senior. That's why I think he's going to see the field this year. I think he's smart. I think he's mature for his age, and he's very athletic. And there's a reason why Nick Saban was in his living room the week he committed to the Vols. Okay. He was there saying, hey, I want you. And that's powerful when a guy walks in with 6 rings or 7 rings and says, I want you. I really, really want you to pick the Alabama. And he picked the Vols. So we got fortunate there, in my opinion. Very fortunate. And I think we're going to see that over the next 3 to 4 years. And he might be a 3-year guy. He might be good enough to where he's all conference that 3rd year and he goes to the NFL. I'm fine with that. I hope that's exactly what happens, that we get some guys that are so good that they just go ahead and head to the NFL. I don't have a problem with that. Let's see here. Who else wants to say something or I'd like to just play some less common blue bloods. I guess, I noticed on the Sports Source, they were talking about our teams that we're playing that are out of conference or our non-conference schedule. And this year it's pretty weak because Virginia's just not very good. Virginia's really on the down and outs right now, and maybe they'll get it turned around in a year or two. But that was supposed to be a Power 5 game that was impressive, and it's not. And then, of course, we've got a couple of easy wins there. And now this UTSA, Texas San Antonio, they're number 25 in the country, by the way. Okay. They've got a great quarterback who's outstanding. So this UTSA game is people don't sleep on that game, even though it's at Neyland and they're, group of 5 or whatever. They're good. They're very good. They were like 10-2 last year. And I can't remember. A couple of really good teams beat them. They didn't beat them bad. So that's one we've got to kind of keep our eye on. But, yeah, I can understand people want – and, with a 12-team playoff, it's going to be easier for us to play better non-conference games. Now, if we're going to go to 9 SEC games, that's going to be hard to do because all the coaches in the SEC are going to say, give me 3 easy wins. I can't play 9 SEC games, try to get in the 12-team playoff, and then take on Ohio State or Michigan or USC or somebody like that out of conference. We don't have that many easy wins. We just don't. So I don't think we can go that route. Let's see what else. I don't ever remember. Hold on, folks. Hey, Jan, I'm doing a live program. I'll have to talk to you in a minute. Sorry. My mom knocked on the door there. She lives a few houses down from me. And she didn't know I was doing a live program. But and she's got a little dog named Bunny. The cutest dog you ever saw. Let's see what else we got. Somebody says something smart in here, I guarantee it. I get some of the best comments. Some of y'all make some of the best comments. And it also has something to do with the shows that I do. Like some of you will give me recommendations like, man, that's a great idea. And I'll just take it and run with it. Let's see. Here's one that says, we owe UCLA. I wouldn't mind playing UCLA. And do y'all – who wasn't – no, it was Pittsburgh. I'm trying to think who played. Was it Pittsburgh that Dan Marino – didn't we play Dan Marino when he played for Pittsburgh? That might be. I think that's one of the reasons we played Pittsburgh the last 2 years. Let's see. Have you missed the talk? Yeah, we talked about Nico being rated the top-rated freshman arm talent. So we did discuss that. It was one of the first things we talked about, besides the Bennett Warren thing, which, again, I plan on being live tomorrow morning. It'll be before 12. It'll be sometime 11:15, something like that. Might be 11:30. But I'm going to go live and cover that Bennett Warren unless something comes up and he changes the time, which, look, he's 17, 18 years old. That could happen. And if it does, the thumbnail will show that. Let's say he changes his mind. He wants to do it at 2:30 or something like that. I'll change the thumbnail. But as of now, I'm planning on doing that. And I'm just going to talk for I'm right at 1 hour. So I'm not going to go much longer, folks. I appreciate you coming and watching the show. This is the first time I've done it by myself. Like I said, I'm learning the live. It took me really 6 months to get comfortable doing the regular pre-recorded videos that I edit and do all the stuff with. And the first ones I ever did were terrible. I mean, they just were awful. Every once in a while, I'll go back and watch it, and I can only watch a couple of minutes of it because I was awful. And I know that's going to be the way it is with this live stuff. A year from now, I'm going to look back and see some of the live stuff I did. And it's like, oh my gosh, you were a moron. You don't know what you were doing, but I'll get better. I will get better. It's just going to take a little time. But anyway, I did want to talk about that. And hopefully I'll see y'all tomorrow at the live with this. We get Bennett Warren. I think that would be a fantastic get for us. And then Cam Franklin. We need to get this Cam Franklin guy in the boat, 5-star defensive lineman. That would help us a ton with our recruiting class. Plus, that guy's special. I think I've shown y'all some of his highlights. He's quite good. So anyway, I'm gonna end this show now, but I appreciate y'all very much. And we will see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.